I wanted to start out with a few statistics, just so you would all know that there is a lot happening in terms of struggling with mental health. 1 in 5 adults do struggle with their mental health, and we would hope that youth, children and teens would not, but that they do. Look at that. 1 in 5 13 to 18-year-olds also struggle with their mental health. And the 8 to 15-year-old age group is not far behind. We also know that mental health challenges begin early in life. And I'm going to ask you a little later on to use your instincts, because your instincts do pay off. You know the kids you're working with, and if you are fearful, if you're worried about someone, probably your instincts are right. When I was a scout leader, I knew several of the kids in my scout troop struggled, and in the end, they worked with me as a therapist later in life. And I feel like the earlier we intervene, the faster we ask those questions, the better. Kind of scary. Half of those challenges begin by age 14. As you can see, adult depression and anxiety rates are higher than probably most of you expect, but look at that. The data is coming in with the pandemic, and we're doubling those numbers. 40% of us are walking around feeling anxious. Depression is tough. It feels like the whole world is on your back. Go ahead, Anna. When untreated, there are negative consequences. A stitch in time does save 9. The earlier we do something about what's going on and get people help, support, and treatment, the better we'll be. It's not as easy as it may seem to identify whether someone is depressed. Yet 13% of our kids, when taken the youth survey, tell us that they've had a major depressive episode in the past year. Please trust your instincts. If you're worried about someone, ask some questions, look around, find out what's available. I didn't put this on my slide, but I'm going to hold it up to my camera. This is Your Life Iowa. And there's a text and a chat number. And if you're worried, that's a 24/7 support line for you. And then local people can help if you're really worried about someone. Anna, maybe we should add it to the PowerPoint if you're going to keep it.
Will do. Thank you.
Many of us are familiar with the negative symptoms of depression, the persistent sadness, feeling hopeless, withdrawn, moving around or talking slowly, not having enthusiasm. But depression can be a little confusing. Sometimes it just looks like someone's not paying attention. They're not concentrating, they're forgetful, they have difficulty making decisions. When a person's brain is depressed, it's hard to make decisions and stay in tune. Also, you hear your kids talking to you. When they make self-deprecating statements, ask about them, dig in more, ask some questions. When they make negative comments about themselves, ask them to give you a little bit more of a sense of what they're worried about or feeling is not okay in their life. We certainly know that we have kids who are irritable, a little agitated at times, a lot of restless energy and oppositional behavior. Often those behaviors get labeled in a whole different vein, but we need to think about that often there's some underlying issue going on. So don't discount, if you've got an irritable soul in your group, that there's not something important happening in their life. The most concerning signs would, of course, be a kid who talks a lot about death. They give away important items to people because they want to be remembered. They talk about not wanting to live or that they have suicidal thoughts. And I get really scared if a kid has suicidal urges that they feel that they cannot control. Sometimes those statements are made very benignly, and you have to dig in and listen to find out if what they're saying is important. We do know that suicide rates are also increasing. Look at that. When I first came into the field, the suicide rates were really high. We put a lot of money into prevention. We brought those numbers down. Here they go, back up again. In Iowa, every 20 hours, someone dies of suicide. Think of that, every 20 hours. Younger age groups have typically not had the higher suicide rates of older adults or middle-aged adults, but look at what's happening. Ages 15 to 24 now are right at the national average for suicide. That's pretty scary. According to the CDC, the suicide rate for 10 to 24-year-olds has increased 56%. If that's not high enough, look at the suicide rates for 10 to 14-year-olds. I have some people on my team who have lost individuals to suicide who were in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. It does happen. That's why we need to pick up on those cues. So I said to Anna, she said, give me, a list of signs and symptoms. And I said, you can look at signs and symptoms, but you have to ask, you have to dig in, you have to ask questions. And be curious. I always say, act like Columbo. Those of you who are my generation on the screen, you know who Columbo is. If not, you can watch it on Nickelodeon or Hulu. But he always asks a million questions in a very soft, inquisitive way. If you're worried about someone, if you've heard them talk about not wanting to be alive, please don't rush. Slow yourself down, find a quiet place. Pull your kid, your scout, off to the side. Listen to them and give your full attention. If I was in the room with you, I would actually pick one of you to role play a little bit with, and we'd maintain eye contact at eye level. It's really important that they not see you looking at your phone, your watch, the other kids. Listen to what they're saying and reflect and clarify back. Again, don't give advice. Don't tell them things are going to be okay, they're going to be better. Those are all false reassurances. Just reflect and clarify. Sometimes a student, I was referred a student one time by a teacher who said that he was going to go jump off a bridge. Well, he didn't mean that. We needed to just clarify. He was being a little obtuse in that situation. Take your time, don't rush. Go ahead, Anna. Above all, especially you, do not keep a secret from others. If you're worried, if they've told you something, you need to share that you care so much about their well-being and their future that you need to go to others to make sure they have the support that they need. And if they're nervous, if they're afraid, then make sure that you explain to them that you'll help run some interference with those individuals. But the most important thing is to look through your resources in your community. And I understand many of you are from many areas in the community, so a list of local resources wouldn't help you. But what we're trying to do is do a tag team and provide them an umbrella of support. Some of you may understand suicidal ideation, some of you may not. Maybe it's not a place where your brain or any of your family members' brains have ever gone. But people who are suicidal don't want to be suicidal. They want to feel better. They just feel exhausted and worn down. The key to changing the outcome is to stop that erosion, to work on that ambivalence and help them feel in control, more powerful, less helpless, and more positive. One thing not to say, and I have to admit, I've done this a time or two in my day, but say, you're not thinking about committing suicide. You're not suicidal, are you? That is not the way to phrase it, because that shows you're uncomfortable with the topic, and that they might then be afraid to tell you their real feelings. So lower your voice, soften your voice, and say, I need to ask you a really important question. You've just explained to me that some things are very stressful and a little overwhelming in your life. Are you suicidal? I've never had a kid get angry that I asked. They're honored that I would even care about them enough to ask. If they think it's silly and funny, they'll laugh and say, oh my gosh, Sue, no way, I'm not gonna feel that way. You don't have to worry about me. And then I say, thank you. That means whatever stressor we're working on, we've got more time and we can work on it in a more deliberate way. Next, Anna. Counseling is a partnership with an individual. And just remember that that relationship is a trusting relationship, and you all are counselors to the kids. You hear things from them when they're sitting around a table with you that others may not hear. We have to remember that we are conducive and not coercive. The way we go about talking to kids makes a difference. All it takes is baby steps to move things forward. It doesn't mean we need a miracle. It doesn't mean we need a magic wand. Start with little tiny steps to make things better. I find in my counseling relationships, once we uncover some of the misconceptions, some of the blocks, some of the barriers, once people show their support for that student, they don't feel so alone and they don't feel as desperate. Social support is so, so important. And that's why, you know, Anna invited me to come speak with you, because you haven't been able to be together. This is not a replacement for face-to-face. You can see my voice. I can't see, I told Anna I wasn't sure I wanted to do a PowerPoint because then my face is little teeny tiny and I don't get to see your faces. I don't see you nodding or shaking your head or going, huh? Not feeling like I don't know what I'm talking about. So social support is important. Connections are important, and scout leaders are important in kids' lives. They need to feel like that group of people is a support network for them, their peers included. It's critical. Remember, if something's not going right, a little brainstorming can lead to some problem solving. Anna and I had a fun time doing some brainstorming when we were just chatting, and she was checking me out to see how I would do, I'm sure. But, you know, there are ways to brainstorm around these barriers that have come our way, the social barriers, the infectious disease barriers, the space barriers. Little tiny steps make a difference. It helps one feel more in control, not so alone. If someone's on a suicidal continuum, you move up and down that continuum really quickly. So one little teeny tiny improvement can make a big difference. Learn what's available in your community, ask questions, ask people to give you lists of resources. It's all a money game. In this world, we know what insurance is all about. There are some services and communities that are free, but most mean there will be a charge. Sometimes you got to work outside the box. Many of you on this screen are part of my mental health region, the 9-county region. Those of you up in the Decorah, Wakan area, that's a whole different mental health region. But if someone cannot afford mental health care or they need crisis care, the mental health region, our tax dollars pay for that. So sometimes we have to look outside the box and keep calling and asking questions. People don't come ready for change. They're ambivalent. We have to work with them where they're at. If we're arguing or telling them what to do, we're doing the wrong thing. If someone talks about wanting to make their life better, don't let that moment pass. That's when you pull them off to the side, even if it means you're not going to get your activity done, even if you mean you have to put people on hold or go off into your own special chat room on Zoom. You need to not let that moment pass. They may be giving you a piece of information that they have not given anyone else. We all know how tired we are. COVID-19 has depleted our energy. We need to talk about it and put it in words. I love the humor. I'm familiar with Bodie, watched him grow up. He was my kid's scout leader. But humor is everything. And it was fun to watch you all bantering, or listen to you all and watch you all bantering ahead of here. We need to talk about how hard this is. And instead of doing you statements and blaming statements and ranting about it, sometimes we need to talk about how vulnerable, how tired we feel. It's also, I said to Anna, sometimes we just need to set boundaries and say, you know what, I've got to set a boundary here. I'm stopping this. Time out. No, I can't keep going on. My brain is jelly. We need self-care even more now than we ever did before. And I think as a nation, as a Midwestern group, we are not very good at self-care. Remember, kids need to move. They're not getting outside as much. I drive by my local elementary school here where I led scouts. And I like seeing, even in the cold, the kids are outside. You know, we may complain it's cold, but those kids really don't care that it's cold outside. We also need to admit we can't do it alone, and we need each other, and ask for help. Ask someone to complete a project that needs to get completed if our brain is mush. We need each other to survive. We need to build connections and coalitions and find out who is ready, willing, and able. If you need a spot to put those scouts that has a great big tall roof and a lot of space so you can space them out, my guess is there's some buildings in your community that can do that. We need to think outside the box. We all feel better helping, and that business who has some empty space might be more than happy. They feel like they're at least adding to the solutions. There's one of my 10 typos, Anna. We need to think outside the box, give back to others. Scouts are good at helping and helping others. Maybe your scouts will feel better if they write letters or do little projects for those in the nursing homes right now. You can talk to your leadership and find some policy level solutions to getting these kids together. Maybe your community can help. But all along here, we all, myself included, need to work on our self-regulation, our calming strategies. And you know what? I'm grieving. I am missing so many things in my life. I'm missing seeing my brand new baby twins that were born to my son in the middle of COVID. It's now been over a month since I've seen him, and we're hoping that we'll be able to make some connections if we all isolate before Christmas. So we're grieving a lot of things that are normal to us. I didn't know if I'd have time, but I'm looking at the clock and I think I can do this. This is called motivational interviewing. And if any of you want to do some reading, it's a really good strategy to create change. If you had one thing to change, what would you work on? On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this change? What made you choose an 8 on a scale of 9 to 10? That must mean it's very important to you. Oh, well, that's not very important if it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3. What would move it to a higher number? Are you ready to do this? What would it take? So you can say that to your scouts. You can say that to each other. You know, what do we need to change and do differently during this pandemic? Good brainstorming. I'd love to hear it. And we all need to believe in science, believe in healthcare professionals, believe in those vaccines and all those treatment regimes. I have 2 friends who've now been given remdesivir and inflams and antibiotics and all the whole shebang, and they're still alive, and both of them have compromised health conditions. I have 3 friends who have died of COVID. The first person who died in my life was the first death in Iowa, and she was on my Mental Health America board. Our kids weren't in Scouts together, but our kids went to school together, and I went to graduate school with her. So sometimes we just need to say to ourselves, courage is that quiet voice. It's not big, it's not roaring, it's not noticeable, but it's that quiet voice at the end of the day that says, I'll come back again tomorrow, I'll give it a try. And to teach our kids that we're with, that we're willing to do that, we're willing to listen, we're willing to help them find help, we're willing to help them help their parents understand what they're scared about, what they're frightened of, or why they feel that their life isn't important. We can be that medium for them. It's scary. I can still remember the first time I called a parent to tell that parent that their child was suicidal. You know, the first thing that parent said to me was, why would they tell a stranger? Why did they not tell me? So that's all I've got for you. I actually deleted a lot of my slides, Anna. I could have gone on a lot longer, but I filled the whole 20 minutes.
So that was so wonderful. I'm so appreciative of your time. One of the questions I do have is, as leaders, I feel like that is the next natural step that we would do if we noticed anything concerning, would be to contact the parent. And I know you've worked with a lot of teachers too in this. Do you have any advice, you know, on navigating that conversation with the parent if you are noticing some things that bring you concern?
Again, be tentative. Don't come on too strong, even if your heart is beating out of your chest and your blood pressure and your heart rate are all elevated. Just say, be honest. Use those I statements. I'm really nervous about doing this, but your son told me this today, and it concerns me. And I just think we need to dig in and explore and figure out what's going on with him. Or he looks really sad, or he doesn't play with the other kids. He tends to have his head down, rarely smiles. You reflect back. And then I would say we have such fabulous school counselors. That's where you go. If it's not the pediatrician, it's the school counselor. And then, you can offer to be a liaison. You can offer to go in with them to explain. Just one more shoulder to shoulder in that room sometimes makes a difference. And one, like surrounding people like an umbrella of services where you do a tag team. If a kid feels supported, they're going to feel hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.